We have talked soccer. We have talked a little bit of basketball, but we'll talk a little bit more basketball in a few minutes to end the show. But I do want to talk a little bit of the draft because I know that Champ wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I know I want to get Arun's thoughts on that as well. So, Champ, are you happy with what we did with the draft? Is there certain players you want to highlight, or how do you want to? What do you want to talk about tonight? Oh, I think you're muted on my
Sorry,
end.
no, I muted my own mic because I'm sitting here playing PGA Tour on Xbox, and I didn't want to be saying or making any reactions and get caught on the mic, so I muted myself. But I just I want to highlight the fact Washington had 9 picks this year in the draft, and 3 of them actually came from Philly in a trade that happened and stuff like that. They managed to get 4 offensive players and 5 defensive players. So it looks like they were kind of slightly balanced when it came to what they wanted to do and what pieces they wanted to add to the team. I think the main highlight was at number 2. They had the second overall pick because of how they did in the previous season, and they went and got 2023 Heisman Trophy winner Jaden Daniels, the quarterback from LSU, 6'4", 181 pounds. His career numbers at LSU, his career numbers in college, where he's had a 66.3% completion percentage, 12,750 yards, 89 touchdowns against 20 interceptions, with a 158.4 QBR career wise. And he also had 3,307 yards rushing with 34 touchdowns. So he's a dual threat. So that's something that is very, very valuable, especially at this level, having a dual threat back there at quarterback, and especially when you have the weapons at wide receiver like McLaurin, like Dotson, and things like that. And speaking of the receivers, they also went and got CMC's little brother, LMC, Luke McCaffrey from Rice, who spent 2 seasons not only in Nebraska, but also at Rice. But most of his production came when he transferred to Rice. He has 131 career receptions for 1,732 yards with 19 touchdowns. He also has 157 rushes for 927 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he's also a dual threat. He can go and catch the football, but he can also run the football. So the new offensive coordinator can come up with some really unique schemes that can involve him in the run game as well as get him in the slot in the pass game with McLaurin on one side, Dotson on the other side. So that's a really good thing. They also went and got Brandon Coleman in the third round at number 67. McCaffrey was number 100 in the third round. Coleman can be slotted in as either a tackle or a guard. They did get some off-season acquisitions on the offensive line, and they already had someone in-house that could probably take over for Leno, who's no longer with the organization at left tackle. But I'm sure that they can slot Coleman in there somewhere on that offensive line, so the offensive line can get younger and younger. But the key thing is the defense. The defense really got some pieces to really slot in there and really bring some youth in there. The first pick that they had in the second round was Jerzon Newton from Illinois, a D tackle. He was a first team All-American in this past season and a Big Ten defensive player of the year. He led his team in sacks. He had 7.5 sacks. He currently holds the record in FBS for block kicks with 4 of them. He's blocked 4 field goal kicks in his career. And he also had 52 tackles, 8.5 of them for losses, and 11 starts in 2023. So he is definitely going to be a disruptive force with Allen and them on that front 4. You also had in the backfield, in the defensive backfield, Mike Serstinsky from Michigan, a DB, 5'10", 183. He has 108 total career tackles, 70 of them solos. He also has 7 career interceptions, 20 pass deflections, and 2 2 forced fumbles. So he's definitely going to be a tackling machine. So he's definitely going to be somebody, if he keeps the receiver and the ball in front of him and they catch it, he's going to get them every single time. You also have Jordan McGee, who was drafted from Temple with the 139th pick in the 5th round. He led his team in tackles with 80 of them. 14 of them were for losses, along with 3.5 sacks. And Javante Jean-Baptiste from Notre Dame, who was the last pick that the Commanders had, he actually led the Irish. He was drafted from Notre Dame. He led the Irish in tackles for losses with 10.5. So as a DN, he gets to the backfield more times than not. And he also had 5 sacks in 2023. His career numbers, he has 100 sacks, 100 tackles, I should say, 46 of them solo, 20 and a half of them were for losses, 13 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and he also had 2 fumble recoveries. And in the combine, he had the 7th fastest time among defensive ends in the 40 with a 4.66. So he's a pretty fast dude at 6'4", 255 pounds on the line. So to say that I'm ecstatic about these picks would be an understatement. It's clear that this new regime came in with this new coaching staff and they knew what they needed to get. They knew what they needed to plug in, and they went and they got that. And then they're going to go with whoever got undrafted and try to get those in there and see who can come into training camp and fit into this program. So I'm really excited to see what this Commanders team can do. We even went and got a tight end in the 2nd round, Ben Sinnott from Kansas State, who actually was an all Big 12 first teamer both in 2022 and 2023. He has tied the school record for most receiving yards by a tight end with 10. He is 3rd in school history in receptions with 82. 4th in yards with 1,138. He started 12 games in 2023 with 49 catches for 676 yards and 6 touchdowns, and he's only the 4th Kansas State tight end to eclipse the 1,000-yard mark in a career. So clearly, he's going to be more of a possession tight end and mostly maybe used as a blocking option in the run game or even in the pass game. But they really went and addressed a lot that they needed to do in this draft, and hopefully they will equate to some kind of success coming up in the season.
Yeah. But it looks like we got a lot of interesting picks and undrafted free agents. We got a quarterback from Notre Dame, which is interesting. We got a running back from USC. We got a safety from Iowa, a tackle from Toledo, another safety from Texas Tech, a defensive tackle from Virginia Tech, a wide receiver from Georgia. From Arizona, we got a running back, and Pittsburgh got a cornerback and a tight end from UCLA. So got some nice little picks to try to see if we can do something with that. Arun, I'm gonna refill my water, but give me some of your thoughts on the draft as a whole.
Yeah, Washington ended up getting its quarterback. Daniels won the Heisman Trophy. I saw the comparisons to RG3, but he's a little bit light, but as Champ alluded to, he's a dual threat, and that's what I think they were looking for. Dan Quinn always said that the defenses would have trouble playing for dual threat quarterbacks, and he wanted opposing teams to be able to spend a few more hours, sleepless nights, planning for Washington's offense. And although Newton, he was the best player on the board. Granted, Washington did need an offensive tackle, maybe a couple of them, but he had a 1st-round draft grade. And Payne and Allen, they played over 800 snaps, so they're going to rotate defensive linemen perhaps this season. And Allen, I think he's on the last year of his deal, so maybe it'll turn out to be a good pick. Sanders still, he was a captain of the Michigan defense. He's supposed to be good at covering from the slot. Yes, Washington did take 3 defensive backs last year, but I guess they still need help in the secondary, and even with all those picks, and especially St. Juste, and they need some help. And they did finally. The tight end looks like he'll be solid. They compared him to the lavish plays with the Juszczyk and George Kittle, good blocking. And then, Luke McCaffrey's not only a dual threat, but he's a triple threat because he's actually a quarterback before at Nebraska and Rice. So maybe there'll be some trick plays. He wasn't able to complete any passes once he turned into receiver, but you never know. And maybe they'll drop a couple plays for him. And they finally did get a tackle in Brandon Coleman, or he could also play guard. So we'll see what happens. Right now he'll be sliding into that tackle position. They still might need some help. Maybe they'll make some trades, or maybe they'll sign an undrafted free agent who turns into something. But overall, it looked like Washington just went for the best players available. They didn't try to fill needs, which is probably a good long-term strategy. A little bit worried about Daniels' health in the short term, but I think Washington's well on its way to becoming a pretty good team and down the road at least.
And also, you have to think about something with drafting Jordan. Jordan from Temple is they declined the 5th-year option on Jamin Davis. So you might be thinking long-term in terms of your linebacker position, in terms of depth, having Jordan back there would be a good strategy as well, given what he did at Temple. So I think that's another sort of good move there by this new Commanders front office and drafting him where they got him.
Yeah. Real quickly, I just wanted to say that Anthony Davis just went down with an injury. It's sort of almost like a hip check if you were playing hockey. So Kai comes over, puts his arm into him. Seems like a pretty simple play, not like it would cause a lot of damage, but he went down in a pile, in a heap, and he's still down and being looked into right now. I want to give a couple just quick scoring updates around the league. The Thunder did defeat the Pelicans and win that series 4-0. And they won that one 97-89 tonight. The Celtics also won today 102-88. Interesting series there with the Heat winning one of the games in Boston, but then Boston coming back with a vengeance and winning the 2 games in Miami. So they're still up 3-1 going back to Boston to win it in Game 5. The Lakers Nuggets, the Lakers lost the first 3 games. They were able to win Game 4. Right now they are up 56-50 with 10:53 left in the third in that one. In the Dallas-Vegas game that's happening right now, Vegas just had a penalty called on them. Chandler Stevenson, ex-Capital, was in the box. Dallas had a 2-minute power play that went awry. It's still 2-2 in that game with about 3.5 minutes left in the second period. So those are some of the different games that we're watching right now and that have happened throughout the night. I do want to give a little update in the fact that the Nationals were able to beat the Marlins 7-2 in their game, and the Orioles beat the Yankees 2-0. I missed a prime chance to troll Scott in that last segment. So he's
Oof.
a Yankees fan. I should have checked that score before. But happy the Orioles are won that game. The Yankees have actually played 2 more games. They have 1 more loss and 1 more win than the Orioles, but by percentage, I believe the Orioles have a better record right now. So those are some of the games that we've been monitoring throughout the thing. Champ, any other final thoughts on the draft before we give our final thoughts on the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs, and then a little bit of wrestling talk?
I just got, again, I feel very confident that this coaching staff and this front office staff did what they needed to do in terms of getting the picks that they needed to look towards the future and to really set themselves up for some semblance of success moving forward. And I mean, what else can you ask for? They had the number 2 overall pick. Even though they did sign a quarterback in free agency, they want to look to the future, and they look to the future with Jayden Daniels. And only thing we can do now is just trust the process. trust the process and see what happens. Yeah, that's a cliche that everybody says, trust the process, but we have to trust the process in this point. Honestly, we have to trust it, because if not, then we're going to be lost, honestly.
So Anthony Daniels is back in this game, so we'll see how that goes. Anthony Davis, sorry. And yeah, he's looks very sore. But yeah, they still have a 6 point lead. We'll be monitoring that. Arun, any final thoughts on the draft before we switch gears and talk a little bit of the NBA?
No, not much. It's just crazy that 6 quarterbacks are taking the top 12, but we'll see how that all turns out.
Yeah, and then there's a big gap between quarterbacks, for a long time. It
The
was
biggest in NFL history, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's pretty wild. They have that many and then a huge gap. So just an interesting draft overall.
Williams proved to me why I'm glad we didn't draft him, because that Bama went and he texted the punter that the Bears drafted in this draft and said, "Hey, you're not going to be punting much here." And I said, "You are an idiot because you should not be saying stuff like that to someone who's a rookie coming into this organization. Like, that should not even have been a text. That should have even been sent. The
I
text
think
that
it
should
was
have been
trying to
sent.
be I think it was trying to be a joke, but I think it fell flat.
Nah, well, he shouldn't have said it
I
anyway.
heard like a Bears fan like that joke, so I don't know. Like maybe, who knows? We'll see how it turns out though.
Dallas scores.
Oh wow.
Yes. All right, they take a 3-2 lead over Vegas. 128 left in the second period now.
Anthony Davis just came back, I guess, too.
Yeah. So he came back, and then big time shot was missed, and then down on the other. Oh, and now there's a free throw going. I'm so confused. What was just happened?
Probably illegal
Davis
defense,
was like a
technical.
ton of pain though. They're at 59-54. I got 9:20 left in the third, so still a lot of time left in this. I think we're gonna switch gears real quickly to MLB. And thank you, Champ, for giving the thoughts on the draft. I know that Carol might be doing some sort of show with Dugenais at some point where they give their thoughts and elaborate more on the draft. We'll see. I know that Carol was going to try to come on, but he had a busy night tonight. But I want them to have time where they can really dedicate towards discussing it. So, Carol, also exciting news, is going to be a season ticket holder, I think, next year. So he might be doing pre and post games from now it's known as Commanders Field. It used to be called FedEx Field. So that'll be fun. And he's trying to go to some UFL games as well. And he went to the draft, and so I know that he has pictures and video, and I'm sure other stuff that'll come out from that over the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for our coverage of the draft. It is there's a lot more coming. I'll put it that way. But I appreciate Ken and Arun's initial takes on it, and I'm more of a wait and see kind of guy, and see how they're gonna plug it in with this new coaching staff. And I've been burned too many times in the past thinking that we had really good drafts, and felt like it didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to. So I'm going to take a wait and see approach with these guys, but hopefully they'll be able to get it all together for sure. So I've got 30 seconds left in this period here. I'm going to keep it here. 3-2. Dallas is up. Vegas is trying to charge down the ice. Dallas is meeting them. It's a bit of a grind down the wall. They're able to get it out. 13 seconds left. Vegas is on their side of the ice, and they're just going to hold on to it here, I think, and let the time run out. And they'll take a 2-3. They're down 2-3 into the third. Again, at home, they have an opportunity here to take a commanding 3-1 lead in this series. But if Dallas can come away with this win, it will tie the series 2-2, which would be very exciting. Let's talk a little bit of baseball real fast. I'm going to go through all of the games from last week real fast, and then I'll get Arun and Champs thoughts if they have any on this. But the Nationals unfortunately lost 3 games to the Dodgers to start last week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They lost 4-1, 11-2, and then 2-1 in the rubber match. But then they were able to come back and sweep Miami. They were able to win 3-1 in the first game, 11-4 in the second. They were down in that third game pretty big early on the Sunday game. They were down 6-0 at the end of one, 7-0 at the end of two. Washington scores 5 runs in the fourth and 4 runs in the fifth to take a 9-7 lead. They're able to add one to make it 10-7, but then Miami comes back at the bottom of the seventh inning, scores 2 runs to get it real close, and then at that point it was 10-9. Washington was still up, but they were able to put up 2 runs in the top of the eighth to make it 12-9, and no runs scored in the ninth inning to take a 12-9 lead going into the last game. So again, these games are all in Miami. And that last game we were able to win 7-2. We were up 2-0 at the end of three. Able to score a third in the fifth. They were able to make it 3-2 in the sixth, but we were able to put 4 runs up in the seventh, and that ended the scoring in this game. So again, earlier tonight they won 7-2 to sweep that series in Miami. They then go to Texas tomorrow to start that series to the Texas Rangers. They'll continue that Wednesday and Thursday, and then a home series against Toronto this weekend. Friday the May 3rd. I'm sure on Saturday, May the 4th, be with you. I'm sure they'll do something Star Wars themed. And then on Sunday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. It'll be a 4 o'clock start on Saturday and a 1:35 start on Sunday. So that is the week in review and the week upcoming. Arun, any thoughts on the Nats as I see you're wearing a Nats shirt?
Yeah, really good week for the Nationals. Yeah, they lost to the Dodgers 2-3, but they got swept, but they won 2 out of 3 of the Dodgers the previous week. So I think they were kind of due to get swept by the Dodgers. Dodgers are probably the best team, even though the record doesn't show that they look like they're going to make a World Series run. And then they swept the Marlins, so now they're only 1 game out of a playoff spot if this season ended today. So that's pretty good, encouraging considering the slow start of the season. And somebody sent me this that the last time they've only started 2 times, 11 and 14, other than this season. Those 2 seasons, the Nationals won the World Series in 1924 and 2019. So we'll see if the World Series is in the card. Maybe not, but stranger things have happened.
That's crazy because I kind of remember the Nationals being so bad early on in the season and them having to come back that year in 2019.
They started 11 and 14, but then they went even worse.
Yeah, then they went in a tailspin and then they came out of it, I guess. So that's just interesting because I forgot about them starting off hot because my memory is, the comeback, but I guess that was further in.
And they also had like a $200 million payroll, whereas this team has like 50 or $60 million payroll or something.
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, we had a bunch of old guys, right? And they won won it all. So you never know what's going to happen. Ken, any quick thoughts on the Nationals before I switch to the Orioles?
Yeah, I mean the Nats are currently 6-4 in their last 10 games, including this 4 game sweep of the Mariners. They're currently at 500 at 14-14. So, like Arun said, like being at this level could be a very good sign that this could be the year that they could do something with this. But it's going to come down to just them being able to execute and be able to do things. Like they're coming off of a sweep prior to this previous series, so they can't allow themselves to get swept too many times and stuff like that. I mean, but we can't speculate too much on this because it's a very long season, 162 games, and we're not even into May yet. We're only a couple days away from May, so it's still early in the season. Anything and everything can happen between now and when it's time to start talking about playoff baseball. So they're really going to have to do some things to really solidify if the omen that was mentioned by our good friend Arun could come to fruition. But we'll have to see what happens,
Yeah, they also beat the Astros 2 out of 3 before they got swept by the Dodgers. They had a really slow start. They did lose 2 out of 3 to the A's, and my friend pointed out the Orioles just lost 2 out of 3 to the Athletics. So it was looking pretty bad for the Nationals to start the season. Yeah, they're probably not going to win the World Series, but it's not going to be. I don't think they're going to be one of the worst teams either. Even though that hurts their interest because they would potentially get a top draft pick last year because of the anti-tanking rules. They only got they weren't able to get that top caliber draft pick. And this year they are incentivized to tank, but if they're playing well, they play well, and hopefully they draft well with the 10th pick or something like that. That you can always find good draft players later in the draft in baseball.
Room with the segue.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's switch gears real quickly to uh the defending East champs in the AL. The Orioles have played pretty well lately. It's kind of been like back and forth the whole entire last week. So last Monday at the Angels, they won 4-2, then they lost 7-4 the next day, then they won 6-5. And they lost to Oakland 3-2. Then they beat Oakland 7-0. Then they lost to them 7-6, and then they beat the Yankees 2-0. So they've literally gone every other. So they got 4 wins and 3 losses because they've gone every other. But overall, playing pretty well. They played Tuesday against the Yankees, 6:35 start. And then they play on Wednesday against them at 6:35, and then Thursday it's a 1:05 start. And then over the weekend they go to Cincinnati. They play them at 6:10, 6:40, and 4:10 on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then next week they actually play, or the following week they will play Washington in their the 2 games in Washington. So we'll be covering that as well. Arun, any thoughts on the Orioles?
Yeah, they look like they're turning it around. Rubenstein just bought the team, and from the interview I saw opening day, he looks like really knowledgeable. And unfortunately, Angelos died, but it looks like Rubenstein's going to be a better owner as far as keeping talent around. Henderson's batting 377, 376, and that's really good for the Orioles. And they beat the Yankees, and I think that's probably the key is to win these divisional series, and hopefully for them they do well against the Yankees.
For sure. Champ, any final thoughts on the Orioles?
I mean, they also have the same 6-4 record in the last 10 games like the Nationals, but they've had a much better go at it in their first part of the season, sitting at 18-10, sitting at the top of the AL East, which for the longest time when I was a really hardcore baseball fan was owned by the Yankees. And the fact that they were able to beat the Yankees in the series is a big testament to this team, especially being the defending AL East champions. They're really they really are setting themselves up to not only possibly repeat, but they also have a target on their back with not only the division, but with the AL as a conference as a whole, to really step up and to replicate what they did last year. Because last season, they were a very unstoppable force in the AL, even though playoff wise it didn't show, but during the regular season they were one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. And so they really need to replicate that this season if they're going to show that they are back to where they were back in the early to mid 90s, where they were one of the best teams in the AL East and one of the best teams in the AL when I was watching baseball hardcore, when they had a Cal Ripken, when they had a Scott Erickson, when they had a Mike Mussina and things like that before we had the Nationals here in DC. I used to watch the Orioles and root for the Orioles because that was the only team that was closest to DC. And I used to, when I wanted to play baseball, I used to want it to be like Mike Mussina with the knuckle curve and the things like that. So it's really good to see the Orioles have this resurgence. And it seems like last year, hopefully they show that last year wasn't a fluke. And so far, so good. But again, like I said with the Nationals, it's a long season. It's 162 games. Anything can happen. So they got to keep it going.
Yeah, for sure. They're the second to last team in the AL to hit the 10 loss mark. So in the first 30 games, it's pretty good. If they still have 2 games left to hit the 30-game mark, but if they could go to 20-10, that's kind of what I've always said is you try to win 2/3 of the game. If you can try to do that over the course of the season, which is hard to do because it's 162 games or whatever. But if you can try to win 2/3 of the games, you're almost guaranteed like a playoff spot. So, it's that's kind of the goal. What would that put you at point wise? It would be 162 times 0.3. Um, so that would get you to like 100 points, about. So, that would be, that's kind of the goal. And so we'll see if they're able to continue building towards that. All right, Arun, real quick, I want to talk to you about basketball. And then we'll end it with a little wrestling with Champ. Champ, you're not watching any of the NBA playoffs, right?
I am not.
That's fine. So let me put up this graphic here. CMLB. Sorry, I'm switching up my graphics.
While y'all talk NBA playoffs, I'm gonna duck out for a bit
Yeah,
because
that's fine.
I'm playing another tournament on my career mode in PGA Tour.
Yeah.
Nice.
We'll go through the different series real fast, and then we'll end with some wrestling talk here. I'm gonna try
Absolutely.
to finish up in the next 15 minutes if I can. All right, so Arun, it's been pretty exciting in the NBA playoffs so far. The way the bracket has gone down, we talked about it briefly. I was surprised that Miami was able to take one in Boston, but they were able to ultimately win the last 2 in Miami. Do you think Boston just finishes it out now in 5, or do you think that Miami's able to extend it a little bit further?
Uh, I think Boston will take the series in 5 or 6. Porzingis went down with an injury, which is only giving me the cause that maybe that Miami's kind of has a shot to maybe extend the series one more game. But I think Boston with the next game at home, even though traditionally the road team between these two teams, they usually win. But I think Boston should close it out. But the Porzingis injury is the only thing that's like because when he scored single digits in game 2, that's the reason why they lost to Miami. But they also shot 52% from 3. I don't really think Miami's going to do that again, but they do have a propensity to injure players, so that's probably their only shot.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next one is the Cleveland Orlando one. Cleveland started off going up 2-0 in a kind of dominant fashion, and I thought Orlando was kind of sunk. But a lot of famous coaches always say you don't lose a series until you lose a home game, and Orlando stayed true to that. They won their 2 home games and stormed back. There's another game tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Back in Cleveland. What are your thoughts on that series?
Very evenly matched series. Paulo Banchero, the Magic, they responded back at home. Like I'm only slightly favoring Orlando just based on recency bias of the last 2 games, but the last 2 games haven't been particularly close, and it just seems like Orlando's has slightly better younger players, but Cleveland definitely has the experience with Donovan Mitchell making it to the conference finals with the Utah Jazz. But this series could go either way. It's probably going 7.
Yeah. The next one's interesting. Milwaukee, Indiana. I thought Milwaukee would own Indiana, just based on, I thought they had better players, but, injuries and, some things have deterred them. But Indiana's actually up 3-1 in this series. The next game in that series is also tomorrow at 9:30. What are your thoughts on the sort of surprising the Pacers up 3-1?
Well, they were 4-1 against the Bucks in the regular season, including one in-season tournament win. And Giannis was unlikely to play in the series. And now with Lillard out, if he's out, even I think Indiana's got this in the bag. Maybe, probably, it could be 6 or 5. But Doc Rivers has kind of been struggling. Maybe not all his fault. Just like there's the roster construction has been kind of weird because they give a lot of players for Damian Lillard, including Drew Holiday. So I think Indiana should come away with the win and play the winner of the Sixers Knicks series.
Yeah, and then Sixers Knicks. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The Knicks seem pretty dominant. I think they'll probably finish this off in Madison Square Garden. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they can finish it off, but it's also all these games have been really close, and I think it's important for the Knicks not to get too cocky. Well, I don't think they will, but it's just maybe like the Knicks could have easily lost like a couple of these games. So they do have home court essentially in all three games, so like including in Philadelphia. So I'd be pretty surprised if they lost, but they don't want to get this series extended even longer than it needs to, giving Philadelphia A, confidence, and B, the Pacers will have longer rest to prepare for the Knicks. So um, it's going to probably be another battle, but I think there's a chance maybe the Knicks can knock out the Sixers in Game 5, and let's see what happens.
Do you think that no matter what, if it goes back to Philadelphia, that it's always going to be like that many Knicks fans, or do you think that was like a one-off because it was like a weekend game? I wonder if a Thursday night game, if like more Philly fans out there for them. You definitely don't want this to get extended, in my opinion, for sure.
Yeah, I think A, the drive, and B, the Nova fans I think came out in good contingent. There were a lot of I think like maybe like 5 or 10% Nova jerseys, so they were probably chanting. But yeah, I think there weren't as many fans in game three. Like the you couldn't hear the Knicks fans as loud on the road, but maybe because it's a closeout game, maybe they'll show up. I don't know, like or like more people just be encouraged to come over because it is a closeout game and it was a pretty crazy atmosphere and it might be like a lifetime experience. But yeah, probably on average they'll be in between game 3 and game 4. You're right; it was probably on a weekend, which had an effect. But if they, I think I'm surprised there weren't any videotapes of fights that I've seen surfacing on social media because given that Philly fans react, like I've been remembering, like they're like never show up to like a football game wearing a Washington jersey. So I was like, but I guess they're like pretty well behaved in basketball stadiums relatively.
Yeah, for sure. Um, LeBron just went up and made a bucket, but I think just injured himself. Denver had taken the lead, and they still have one. They're up 80-76 now. And it just sucks because like the Lakers put together a pretty good game plan through three quarters in a lot of these games, but they're unable to really hold them off. And it just seems like Denver's able to come through in a lot of these fourth quarters, so it'll be interesting to see. We're still at the end of the third, 109 left, but it's kind of the same trending story as happened in Denver in the first two games, where the Lakers put together a pretty good game plan and played them pretty tough early on. But it's just, I don't know if it's, playing at altitude or what the deal is, but they seem to lose a lot of steam, in the third and the fourth quarter. What are some of your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, the Lakers, I believe they've led for 75% of the games or something crazy during the series, but the Nuggets just keep coming back. It's you have to finish these games. You can't just be winning like in the first half. That doesn't mean like I heard like some weird analyst being like, "Oh, they've been winning most of the time." So like obviously they're a better team, but no, that's just like the Nuggets kind of get them and they just make adjustments. And I just don't think like guys like D'Angelo Russell or Rui, like just they all don't play well at the same time. It's just like somebody's off and then like the Lakers struggle. I think also LeBron's been struggling on the defensive end in the second half of these games. If he plays defense like he did in game 4, then the Lakers have a chance, but he can't miss rotations, especially with Jokic making all these great passes.
For sure. And they just stole the ball again and about to lay it up. And
Missed the
oh,
dunk.
he missed the dunk. Is there a foul called? Um, but yeah, it's pretty wild that they've played them so well and yet oh no, they're saying out of bounds. Interesting. Laker ball, 3.2 seconds left. They are down two.
LeBron did his job on defense there.
Yeah, for sure. So the Timberwolves swept Phoenix. I like how Bradley Beal said I've never been swept before. Talked a lot of trash, and man, Phoenix fans are really upset about this contract now, which we kind of knew is this behemoth, and I'm kind of happy we got rid of it. But what are your thoughts on that series?
Yeah, this I mean, it's not good when your series is decided when Grayson Allen gets injured, because before the season nobody thought he was that good, but he got injured. He's league leader, 3-point shooter, and the problem with Beal, even with Washington, and I guess to an extent Durant and Booker, is that they don't like shooting threes, and the Timberwolves even discourage them from taking threes. And they do shoot a good percentage, but they like the mid range, and you get more points by shooting threes versus twos. And the Timberwolves are just bigger; they can stop shots at the rim. Because of this trade and the Durant trade, the Beal trade, they're just shorthanded, and you can't. It's harder to win with the big three. You need to have like a deep roster, and maybe they can recover a bit with Grayson Allen back. But there's talks that the coach could be fired, or they could trade Durant. Be interested to see what happens. I think they'll run it back one more season, because the Timberwolves, they were also going to break it up last year too, because Gobert was disappointing. So we'll see. Like they just swept the Suns, so maybe they'll give the Suns one more chance, but it's not looking good. And this might be good for the Wizards because they have some pick swaps in 5 years, and maybe the Suns are rebuilding by then. But knowing the Wizards' luck, I'm assuming the Suns will put it back together.
This Mavericks Clippers series is kind of interesting. The first game was at the Clippers, where the Clippers won, but then Dallas was able to win game two and then won game three at home, and they kind of take a 2-1 series lead, but they lost a close one in game four. Game five is coming up on Wednesday at 10 p.m. What are your thoughts on this series?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Kawhi Leonard played in 2 of the games, and the Clippers lost. But then the other 2 games, the Clippers won. Maybe there was some weird, like the Dallas wasn't trying as hard, but or just like Kawhi's not 100%, and he's kind of making bad decisions with the ball. And it seems like the Clippers, without without Kawhi, at least like not one that's like seems like 50%. It seems like the Clippers are better, especially they were up by like 31 points in the last game, but the Mavericks came all the way back, which was pretty crazy. But Paul George had won a really incredible shot, clutch shot. And he's been called a choke artist, but he lived up to playoff P in this one and hit the shot. James Harden with 33 points and just enough to hold on for a win. Luka didn't have a great game, but it should be a pretty back and forth series. I think Dallas should be slightly favored, but you don't know between these two teams. They've had pretty close playoff battles in 2 previous playoff series.
The last one is kind of the one that was a sweep and over, and not a whole lot to talk about. But OKC won theirs, 4-0 over the New Orleans Pelicans. What are your thoughts on OKC being the real deal?
Yeah, I didn't really pay much attention to the series. When Zion was out, I just thought OKC should win the series, and there was one close game in game one, but Thunder really just taking care of business, and more excited to see the Thunder against some real quality team, and perhaps they have a chance to beat the Western Conference champions, and we'll see how it goes going forward. But I just didn't think this Pelicans team was that good without Zion Williamson.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Remind me, is it bracketed? Do they automatically play the winner of the LA?
Yeah, they automatically play. They
Yeah.
automatically play the Clippers or the Mavericks, the 4-5 matchup. They don't get to play the worst team. They assume that the 4-5 like that. Yeah, they don't get to get reseeded. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's a play-in tournament and it doesn't get reseeded anymore. Did it? I know that some sports used to get reseeded. Was
Oh,
that?
and the play-in gets reseeded. Yeah, like the winner of the 7-8 is the 7 seed,
Yeah.
and then
That part is. But in the past, was NBA ever reseeded, or has it always been this way?
it's as far as I've known since like the 90s, it's always been this way, but
Yeah.
maybe it's
For some
changed.
sports, they do reseed, so it's interesting.
Maybe just for scheduling reasons, because it's like we're in the NFL, you have like a week to travel or whatever. In the NBA, it could be like 2 days to travel after a game 7. Maybe that's the reason. But people want to like maybe have like the number 1 seed pick like the 8 through 5 seed who they want to play, but that'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah. I do want to just quickly go through the hockey series just so we can have all of the different playoff series. I know you're not watching it too much, but Florida did win their series tonight, 4-1 over Tampa Bay. Boston is up 3-1 over Toronto. They have a game at 7 o'clock tomorrow. At 7:30 tomorrow, Carolina plays the Islanders. That one's back in Carolina. So both Carolina and Boston can close it out at home. Vegas is playing Dallas right now. Dallas is up 3-2 with about 17 minutes left in the third period here. If Dallas is able to hold on, they'll tie that series 2-2. Colorado is up 3-1 over the Jets, and their series it'll continue tomorrow for Game 4. Colorado. Wait, no, Colorado is the higher seed, so this game is being played in Winnipeg. So Winnipeg is going to try to stay alive at home in that one. Colorado will try to close it out on the road. Vancouver is up 3-1 over Nashville, so they can finish it off tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And then the Edmonton Oilers are up 3-1 over LA, and they'll have a game on Wednesday, but the time is still to be determined in that series. So, yeah, some exciting matchups we'll be talking about next week. For sure on the podcast, we'll talk about the hockey playoffs, the NBA playoffs. We'll talk about DC United. We'll also talk about the Defenders, the Nats, the Orioles, and also we'll have an update on the farm team with the Hershey Bears as well. So lots of fun stuff. We'll also have the return of Davey's eating a sandwich. So he'll be talking about some of these different sports with us as well. Arun, any final thoughts on any of the playoffs or NBA draft or anything else you want to talk before we let you go?
No, not really. I'm just reading Jay Wright's book from Villanova over here. Like, so maybe I'll learn some Nick Sixers insights for the next show.
Nice. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your input with the NBA playoffs as always, and we'll try to get Tim maybe back on next week to talk a little bit more NBA playoffs with you. But I appreciate you for helping us break it down. And next week we should know what the next round is starting to look like.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, and have fun with wrestling talk.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, we'll bring Champ back in with his wrestling talk, and let me switch up my graphics. And yeah, Champ, how you doing with the golf match?
I'm doing all right. I'm in second place right now. Having a bit of a struggle. I'm playing a course that I've only played one other time in my rookie season, so I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Nice. The Lakers are right now down 6 with Anthony Davis is at the line shooting 2, and he makes the first. 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter here. Champ, lots of stuff happening. There's some releases in wrestling, some emotional conversations happening, and some I gotta give credit to some people, some top name guys, reaching out and talking to some of these talent that's being released. And, I got to give Logan, a lot of credit for, trying to reach out and support, people that were, just on the team with him, not that long ago. And, stuff that he doesn't have to do, but that he does. And I like to see, I think he's matured a lot. But let us know what are the big storylines in wrestling this week.
So yeah, we talked about on the podcast that's up right now, episode 239, which is the second episode of season 6. We talked about those one of the releases that happened because when we did episode 238, we had already had a bunch of releases, and then a couple of releases happened after the podcast went online. And one of those was the one that you mentioned, which is Cameron Grimes, who went online and gave an emotional video, which I still have not watched because
I've
I
watched
don't.
it. It is super emotional for sure.
No, I learned my lesson from Rockstar Spud when he got released in 2020. And I learned that when it's an emotional thing like that, I don't watch it because I'm already an emotional person as it is. I'm not watching something like that. I get the clip notes and I move on because I'm already an emotional person. But so not just that, but also WWE is going through its annual draft, which is their way of kind of shaking up the roster and putting people in different brands and things like that. They already started with SmackDown on this past Friday, but they didn't do a lot of big moves. The couple of big surprises were Carmelo Hayes, who was a former NXT champion and former NXT North American champion, got his official call up, and he will be on SmackDown. The other big surprise was another call up from NXT, Kiana James, who's a former NXT Women's Tag Champion. She got called up and she will be on Monday Night Raw. Now, the draft continued and concluded on Monday Night Raw on the night that we are recording this, and I have yet to see who got picked and who went where. I will be checking that out on the next day and seeing who's going where, and we'll talk about that on our podcast this coming weekend. But I'm expecting a lot of big moves and a lot of surprise moves, even a couple of call-ups from NXT with this draft. The other thing going on with wrestling is that Best of Super Juniors in New Japan, they finally have announced not only the blocks, but also the matchups that are going to be taking place for that tournament for the best juniors in the world. One of the juniors that's supposed to be a part of this tournament, Ryusuke Taguchi, who was prophesizing that this was going to be the Super Juniors that he's going to win because it was going to take place on June the 9th at Dominion. And his gimmick is he's all about 6'9", 69. And he was hoping to win this this Best of Super Juniors on day 6 or on day 9 of month 6. But he ran into an unfortunate accident on his bike, and he cannot compete in this tournament. So he will not be able to fulfill the destiny of winning this Best of Super Juniors on June the 6th, on June the 9th, but he was replaced and the matches have already been announced. Myself and Sage will be previewing that tournament next week, and we will be covering that tournament all throughout, all the way until June the 9th, when they have the finals at Dominion in Osaka-jo Hall. It's a lot going on. We just did a podcast recapping TNA Rebellion and AEW Dynasty. AEW is got a lot going on. It's really a great time to be a wrestling fan, and I would just say to the non-wrestling fans, this is the time to get introduced to it and to really embrace it. But also, if you have access to things like Peacock and other media outlets and things like that, to go back and look at how wrestling has evolved from where it was to where it is now.
For sure. Well, thank you for breaking all that down. There's a lot to cover. Definitely go check out the No Spots Pod, True No Spots Pod on twitch.tv. And the VODs are up, and you can get a great insight into a lot of different wrestling stuff. And you can also check out all their new things. They do a lot of live reacts and a lot of fun stuff over there.
Oh, I almost forgot. So, and also, we have a TikTok channel as well, and we have a couple of clips on there. We have 3 clips on there of some really funny things that happen on some live reacts that we did. But we also have gotten back active on TikTok because I have been uploading some really cool clips of some really cool golf shots that I've done playing EA Sports PGA Tour 2023 and things like that. And I'm still uploading a couple more clips on there as well. So if you peruse TikTok at any point in time during your day, because I know that there are a few people that do, because TikTok seems to be all the rage, make sure you check us out at tiktok.com/@TrueNoSpotsPod. Especially if you're into PGA Tour golf gameplay, we will also still upload some clips from some whatever funny or weird moments that we have on our live reactions as well, or even not even our live reactions, but also our recordings of our podcast as well. and things like that. You can also check us out at twitch.tv/True No Spots Pod and check out the VODs. But not only check out the VODs, but check out the clips on our channel to see things like that as well. So we got a lot of content out there, and we're trying to put a lot more content out there.
Awesome. Yeah. If people want any of the links to anything, sportsothp.com, click on the podcast partners button. You can get links to all the different podcasts. Well, Dujanet, who wasn't on tonight, but is often on our show, but also you get the Power Play Point podcast and the No Spots podcast as well. And then the other thing is if you click on the Team Sports OTHP, on there's links to all the socials for all the different hosts. And we'll definitely be updating that this summer, and we'll update the website this summer. I decided I'm not going to update it for season 9 now. I'll just do all that in the summertime. So I know it says up to season 8, but all the stuff is going to be posted there. We are posting the audio podcast a little bit later, a week later, but people can always check out the VODs on Twitch or on my Facebook Live as well. And we also clip it up into all the different segments and put it up on YouTube. I'm sure we'll have a giant hockey segment this week. I'll also do one for the continued.
Y'all had a long hockey segment.
Yes, it was a
That
long
was
one.
long.
Yeah, it was very long, but it's tough. We had 6 hockey fans on, so I definitely wanted to let everyone get their take. And I know it's the end of the season, but also I wanted to get Scott's thoughts, as a Ranger fan as well. So I kind of knew it was going to be long. I kind of thought I always
You
think
had four. You had 4 hockey fans and a semi-hockey fan.
right, exactly. That's true. And but credit to him, I'm happy that we got a Rangers fan getting to represent their team as well. So it's not easy to come on a Caps show as a rival fan. So
No
kudos
comment.
to that. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in and being a part of this episode 339. Again, next week is episode 340. We'll have our 3-year Twitch affiliate stream. We'll have Davey back on, I believe, and other guests as well. We'll be talking about the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, more draft stuff maybe. We'll have some baseball coverage, and we'll talk soccer, and we'll talk about the Defenders as well. And I believe that the Mystics are about to start gearing up soon as well. So we'll start to talk about them in addition. So lots of fun stuff to talk about. Again, check out the True No Spots Pod. And with Champ, and with that, I think I'm going to end our Facebook Live unless there's anything you want to say before we end it. Yeah.
I'm like I said, it's such a great time to be a wrestling fan. And again, I'm really trying to expand the content on the True No Spots podcast, Twitch and TikTok channel, and things like that. So, make sure you just keep an eye on us of what we're doing, and make sure you keep supporting Sports on the Hill podcast. Nine seasons. They're in their 9th season, talking about DC sports without the politics. Make sure y'all keep an eye on this as well, because things are going to happen, and it's going to be great. So,
I'm
keep
excited with
supporting.
Carol getting season tickets now. Like,
That's awesome.
yeah, I
That's
think
fucking
it's
awesome.
going to open up a lot of opportunities for pre and post game stuff, and maybe live reacts and stuff like that. So stay tuned. I know that Carol hasn't been on this show a lot recently, but he's doing a lot of cool things behind the scenes, and so the podcast will be growing. And what's cool about Carol and I doing different projects is we can now do more projects, but us being separate. And I'm super thankful for Champ and for Dujanet and for everybody for stepping up. I want to thank Arun for being a part of this segment, Scott for talking basketball and hockey, Janaea. I love her podcast. Go check her podcast out. Her information will be in the show notes as well. And then Anna and Gil for all season long, talking hockey with me. And C4 as well for going to all the games and giving her insight of going to the live games. So it's been a super fun show tonight. I really appreciate everyone tuning in on Facebook and the audio podcast. And we'll be back next week for episode 340. This is DC Sports Without the Politics, Sports on the Hill podcast.
Gokigenyo. Sayonara.
Recording stopped.
Recording there. We stopped streaming on Facebook. With that, I know that it is getting late. I've got to do some chores real fast before I go to sleep, and it's already 12:15. Let's throw a quick raid to somebody. I want to do. Have you ever gone to an ASMR stream?
No.
They're pretty wild. We're gonna go to someone who has a huge following, big ASMR uh, person goes by the name of Teeny Heels. Creates a space for accessible, wholesome ASMR with hilarious moments sprinkled in. It is wild. We'll go over there. If you've never experienced it, you gotta experience it once in your life. It is the most crazy experience ever. So we'll raid over to her real fast. Hello, CT. Welcome on in. Happy you're able to tune in at the very end. Thank you everyone for being a part of it. Tina for the gift subs earlier. I appreciate that as always. And let me just see if there was anything else. We got Ginger with the resub. So I appreciate that.